my generation, the older guys, Gen X, I'm 51. When I talk to, my advice has not changed at all. People believe in SEO, and I do as well. I'm not putting it down. They believe in online marketing and all these new things. I remember when Facebook started, and now Instagram and YouTube videos. Everything is great. All marketing is great, but nothing will ever be better than going out and meeting people, talking to them, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye and say, hey, I have a lot of experience. How can I be of service to you, right? What is your biggest issue? Not try to say, I want to represent you. Give me all your business. Just what are your problems? What are you facing today that's keeping you up at night? And everybody's the same.
Here I'll be speaking with Danny Schwab, owner of Key Renter Jacksonville, Key Renter South Florida, and Key Renter Fort Lauderdale. Danny manages over 750 properties across South Florida and Jacksonville, and he is an expert at networking. And today he's going to go really in depth into how he actually networks with people to get them to refer him properties to manage. Danny has a ton of experience in property management. He's been doing this for over a decade. And without further ado, I'd love to get to Danny so that you can start to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. I bought my first investment property in 1994, in my early 20s, and I caught the bug right away. I bought a high-rise condo, planning on renting it out, lived there for a few years, but had tenants and just kind of fell in love with the idea of having an aggressive loan, acquiring properties and having, tenants, other people I knew pay my rent or assisting with rent. So right after buying that first property in 94, I bought my first multifamily property in kind of a rough upcoming neighborhood. I grew up in Chicago, so my career started in Chicago. And, I like to say that I went to school at the School of Hard Knocks, classes daily, streets of Chicago. So I made all the mistakes you can make. Just learning and doing things for myself, buying that multifamily and learning that I've got a 3-unit building, but legally it's only a 2-unit building that's got an illegal garden apartment, and navigating that and learning, getting burned on remodels. And, it was back in the fast and furious days of no doc, no verification loans, 5% down on investment properties. So it was pretty easy to acquire additional properties, at a very low bar to get in. So I felt very comfortable watching these trends of the beginning of gentrification in Chicago, and watching how neighborhoods went from really rough, dangerous neighborhoods to changing, and then watching families move in, kind of lower income families, and then watching the urban pioneers, as we used to call them, coming in those neighborhoods. And, just walk, back in the day before the internet, for you kids out there, before cell phones, right? Where you'd stop at a payphone to call the office and they would page somebody, an agent, to meet you. And really just like walking the streets of neighborhoods that I identified, neighborhoods I wanted to invest in, and just learning to study a building from the outside, like look how far setback it is from the street and setback from the back to see, oh, it's really going to be a small building. And then down the street, the same type of building, but really close to the curb and close to the back, really big lots, and really trying to identify and just calling agents and negotiating. I never wanted to have a real estate license, back then, and I was just looking to acquire properties. And in Illinois, you didn't really you could kind of bypass the whole realtor part of it and work directly with an attorney. So a childhood friend that I grew up playing hockey with was a real estate attorney in his 20s, and he just would write contracts for me and help me negotiate the deal. So that was really how I got my start, and just kind of instantly fell in love with the idea of acquiring real estate and managing units.
Got it. So you went from real estate investor to eventually having your own property management company. How did that transition happen?
Well, there was this incident, kind of a situation happened that some people maybe don't remember, called the Great Recession. And at that point, I was heavily invested, and I decided in around 2006 that I was really smart guy. So I decided to take out a lot of loans and start doing development deals. So I was heavily invested. I had about 16 properties and about 70 units under management that I owned that I was doing very well with. And I started to convert some of these buildings to condos. And I did okay with it in a couple buildings, and I figured I was really going to go for it. So I partnered up with a couple guys, and we bought a old apartment building in a really nice part of Chicago. And we started the deal in about end of 2006. We were building like 16 unit new construction where elevator opened up into the units, like very luxury building. And by the time we got through all the zoning problems and all the issues, the recession had started, and I was not. They stopped funding my loan. So I had a couple projects going on. I was multi-million dollar loans that were the bank stopped funding the loan. So I basically started to, my house of cards, as we like to say, started to fall apart. So some of the buildings that were older that had more equity in them, I was able to keep. Buildings that I purchased in like '05, '06, '04, '05, '06. The value dropped instantly. I started to lose those. I never went through a bankruptcy. I never gave up. I worked with every loan, every bank, every mortgage company to stay as positive as I could. And by 2000 and beginning of 2010, I was down just a few properties. I did some short sales. I was able to keep a couple of my key assets. One, a beautiful old 1880s Victorian in a really upscale area of Chicago by the lakefront. And at that point, I decided honestly that I wasn't able to get credit to purchase additional property. So I had to find the next play, right? And I had all this experience in property management, but I really didn't know what to do with it. So at that time, um, my father, had just turned 80, he was in poor health, and he was not going to come back. He would stay in Chicago in the summers, live somewhere warm in the winter. So he was living out in California in the Bay Area. My older brother's out there. So I decided to just kind of leave Chicago for a while, spend some time with my dad towards the end of his life, which was a very positive experience for me. Got to spend about a year with him and, help him, at the end of his life, do shopping, go to the doctors, and really, really spend some time with him. And then at that point, after he passed, and I decided, well, I really want to get focused again in my real estate career. So I tried to get into some property management, some development stuff in the Bay Area, and it just didn't really work out for me. Things kind of got in the way. I ended up, finding my wife and getting married, and really just decided that, at that point around 2015, that I had to make a move. So a friend of mine was getting involved in the Key Renter franchise system, which was a new real estate company based out of Utah, and he was interested in buying a franchise. So I never really hit me that there was an opportunity not only to be a property manager, but to step into a new franchise situation that could help me along the ways, right? With introduce me to guys like you who do SEO and lead generation and website design and stuff that I had no background in, no idea how to do it. Stuff that kind of maybe made me nervous about starting another business. And I eventually did it. I was living in the Bay Area. I identified the South Florida market as to be a great market for me. It was thriving. It was coming back. The entry for investment properties and single family homes was really low compared to what Chicago was like, meaning you could buy a nice 3 bedroom, 2 bath home in a really nice area by the water for 175,000. So I figured that I could work with some investors I knew in Florida, a lot of people in Chicago that, from Chicago to Florida, that market is really dynamic. A lot of our grandparents and stuff live here, and people retire to here from Chicago, not as much in California. So I decided to get my real estate license online. I passed the state exam in downtown San Francisco, and then finally convinced my California wife to move to Florida. And I started my property management company from California, and moved to Florida right at the beginning of 2017. And, kind of everything took off from there.
Awesome. So now you're in a new market. You don't really know anybody. You have a brand new company. How do you get your first few doors under management? Because at this
Well,
point, you basically
here,
are. starting from
Right.
scratch.
Right. This is a question I get today, right? So I'm an elder in our franchise. I coach other franchise owners, and I always want to offer people advice. And my generation, the older guys, Gen X. I'm 51. When I talk to my advice has not changed at all. People believe in SEO, and I do as well. I'm not putting it down. They believe in online marketing and all these new things. I remember when Facebook started, and now Instagram and YouTube videos. Everything is great. All marketing is great, but nothing will ever be better than going out and meeting people, talking to them, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye and say, hey, I have a lot of experience. How can I be of service to you? Right? What is your biggest issue? Not try to say, I want to represent you. Give me all your business. Just what are your problems? What are you facing today that's keeping you up at night? And everybody's the same. There's not that many issues, right? We have tenant issues, we have code enforcement issues, we have homeowners association issues, we have weather issues, right? Whether you're in the mold and flooding and tornadoes and hurricanes of Florida to the snowstorms and broken pipes of Chicago, right? Everybody has issues, and the only way to be successful, just in my humble opinion, is to go out and meet people and see what you can do, but then go to the property, right? Go walk these properties, talk to the tenants, get involved. A lot of people want to operate their property management company from an office. They want to do their marketing from an office. They want to operate their business from an office. I have employees and team members that are in offices, home offices, doing that. I'm in the field. I feel comfortable in the field. I feel comfortable talking to people. I feel comfortable jumping in. So I think the main thing is just network any way you can, from BNI groups to realtor association groups to anything, insurance agents, mortgage companies. Go to their events. Just get out there and talk to people and say, hey, I want to help.
Where were you finding these events? Like going online, trying to find up a real
Yeah,
estate
so
investor meetup, or what is
yeah,
that?
so the internet now is really really great, right? There's all these things. I mean, you just look at anything within your community and communities you want to be in. So I live in a community of Palm Beach Gardens. I'm about, I don't know, 35 miles, 30 miles from Boca Raton. I live close to a community called Jupiter. So to me, that starts with go to these communities that you want to identify as important to you. Chamber of Commerce, networking groups, realtor associations have these things called marketing madness, where the realtors all to get together in every single community in the mornings, and say, hey, look, I have a brand new property, right? That's very easy to go to a meeting for 30 minutes, pass out some business cards and say, hey, if you have for me, a great referral is someone who says, I hate my tenant's not responsive. I don't know what to do. I have an eviction. I don't know what the market rent is. Like, any of those things are great. And also convince these other realtors and people that you want to work with them, not against them. You're not there to steal their business. You're there to make them look good, right? Everybody wants to have a guy, right? Oh, my guy, I have a guy that can help you with that. So I get involved in everything. I mean, I've become, I don't want to say, like, sound pompous to say I'm an expert, but I've become very knowledgeable in HVAC, and very knowledgeable in plumbing, in electric. I've studied these things my whole life, because you're expected to be able to speak fluently with inspectors, with code enforcement officers, and I think my real value, or I really consider myself to be strong, is that I don't ignore tough situations, right? If you know the situation is difficult from the beginning, right? And property management is not always easy. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone and make that difficult call. So many people I talk to don't want to reach out to let an owner know their AC needs to be replaced, right? Make it comfortable for yourself, get knowledgeable about what it is, get three companies out there to give you quotes, and then sit down with that owner and say, hey, this is what's going on, right? Same thing with tenants. You pick up the phone, you call a new tenant that you've been assigned, you pick up a new property, and they say, I don't know who you are, this is fraud, and they hang up. Or you're scamming me, right? You just got to stay on it. And I think really, okay, so back to your original question, right? Where do you find these groups? These groups are everywhere. right? You find one person who's good in that industry. Let's say a mortgage broker or a business banker that gives investment property loans. And you really hit them up. Not just one time, not just two times. You really try to like offer to take them to lunch, to meet them for breakfast, to ask them where they're networking, follow up with emails. Where do you go to meet your clients?
Are you ever
Where,
showing up to their office?
I mean, I love showing up to a banker's office when they're at a bank, when they actually have office hours, and I pop in, right? Going to places where you're not always welcome is kind of fun at times, right? Like, in South Florida, I don't know if this is for all markets, I don't think so, but we are heavily dealing with HOA communities, right? HOA communities typically do not want to deal with people that are not the owner of the property.
Mhm.
So we're a redheaded stepchild to an HOA community. So I always go in. First time I go, we buy donuts. We bring like a Dunkin' Donuts coffee with a couple dozen donuts, and we just try to commiserate with them. Hey, property management's brutal. I know it's brutal. Dealing with these owners, dealing with my clients, really tough. Oh, your client yelled at me. I'm so sorry. That's why you want to deal with us. So just going to people that are suffering, underpaid, overworked, which is a lot of the code enforcement officers, a lot of the HOA, they'll recommend people to you. So in HOAs, and with code officers, once they realize that the client, the owner of the property, is not the greatest person, doesn't have the time or the courtesy to be kind, they will recommend me to their other people they don't want to deal with. Right? I get it all the time. Code officer, hey, this code officer from this city gave me your number. I'm having a problem with my tenant. When you act professional and you solve the problems, you will develop a good reputation.
Yeah.
It definitely happens. But there's new ways to find networking groups every day. You look at that Everbright, which is popular for events. I went on the website, to decline an invitation for something, a birthday party, and I was just looking at real estate events, and there was an events that these bankers are putting on to teach people how to be investment property owners, like how to grow. So I signed up for the event. It's in Fort Lauderdale. It's at 11:30 in the morning, I think next Wednesday or Thursday. I'm gonna go. I don't know anyone in it. I'm gonna bring a bunch of business cards. I signed up that I want to learn about property investing.
Yeah.
That's like all of it. And I'm gonna
You
go and
you
I'm
know
gonna
that maybe they're not all going to end up investing in property, but some of them might.
and
And
some of them.
when they do, you'll be one of the first ones that they think of.
Absolutely. And maybe I'll be able to pass out some cards. And what I've learned about networking is that the person you meet is not usually going to be your client. But if you can impress them and they're in another industry and they talk to their client, again, they want to be the guy or the girl, right? They want to be the one to say, hey, I can help you with your problem. You want to work with me in my roofing business, and I can introduce you and help you in other ways. And that's with everybody. So I think Tony Robbins is the one that says it. You want to be around high net worth individuals and you want to do business with their clients, right? So whether whoever it is, don't ever hesitate to go up to someone in a social event and say, "Tell me a little bit about your business.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your clientele.
People
How
like
do
to
you,
speak about their business too, so it's an easy conversation to strike up.
especially you find the biggest loudmouth in the group, and they'd love to talk to you about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So now you've got it to a point where you have a certain number of doors under management. You've been going to these networking events. You're bringing in new clients. The business is starting to generate some cash flow. At what point were you like, okay, now I need some help on the operations side? Would you say there's a certain door count that happened at? What moves did you take to try to correct that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did it absolutely wrong. So I hired. I got so lucky. I was introduced to a great woman, Rosa Ramos, who's in Caracas, Venezuela, to this day, and I moved to South Florida, and I do not speak Spanish, so I was automatically at a huge disadvantage. And I still work with Rosa to this day as a remote team member, and she was my first hire, and she's to this day an amazing, strong character and a wonderful human being. So with her and I think I made it to about 170 units under management before I hired my next person, which was
Okay.
absolutely the wrong way to do it.
So you were
Um,
managing 170 units, basically
yes,
yourself and one remote team member.
yes,
Okay.
yes, which is absolutely not the way to do it. I got to a point where I was making mistakes and dropping the ball, which was really uncomfortable position to call somebody up and say, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I made a mistake." You know, so I would say that at the point, you know, at that point, I had already learned what my strength was. My strength, as I said, to be in the field, not to create systems online, not to create operational parameters of things, not to do, technical admin work, and was to be in the field. So you have to understand in property management what you need. Luckily, now don't think everybody that I didn't hire a bunch of third party contractors, vendors. I'm not doing any repairs, any maintenance. I even outsourced inspections. So I wasn't doing every aspect of the business, but I didn't have enough hours in the day. I was up, when owner payouts came around, I was up till 2, 3 in the morning, 3 or 4 days in a row just to meet my deadlines. Getting up early in the morning, and it was before our daughter was born, so it was okay, but it's not a way to be a family man and survive to work that many
Yeah.
hours. But to me, it becomes, there's another old expression. I think maybe a Tony Robbins or whoever said it's like hire someone to do the things you don't like to do or you're not good at, right? In our world today, there's so many ways to outsource. So I started doing that. And one of my first really great hires is I met a handyman type guy who is very well spoken. I mean, thick accent, don't get me wrong. It's South Florida, right? But a wonderful guy who's actually not a Spanish accent, Israeli guy who was very able to do a lot of things and do maintenance. So that was my first hire to really help out with inspections, with repairs, and do some leasing. And then from there, one of the most important things we need is a leasing agent. But, the hardest part about employees is that it really takes about 3 months to get an employee to speak to speak your language, right? To be able to speak as if they were you, to represent your team. And the hardest thing to do is to train somebody every day when you're overwhelmed and busy. So even if you can't really technically afford it to hire someone, it's really important to hire before you need that person. Right? Build it and it will grow. So I would say to anyone today, you're approaching 60 doors, 65 doors, whether you feel you need someone or not, now's the time. You at least should have a remote team member who can get into your property management software and do the easy stuff in property management software stuff, the data entry, the sending out statements, things like that. And then really start trying to hire somebody in the field that can
Yeah.
represent you and be your duplicate, your doppelganger, because it's hard. It's hard
On
to
this
train.
topic, I just finished a book recently called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. And he talks about exactly what you're saying there. Basically, you want to hire people to take over the tasks that you're repetitively doing that suck your energy, that you're not good at. And there's an exercise called basically a time audit. So for 2 weeks straight, you're going to mark down every single task that you did every single day. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you're going to go next to each task. You're going to put a dollar sign. Is this a high value task or is it a low value task? Is this a task that sucks my energy or is it something that fuels me? And then once you go through the 2 weeks and you have that dollar sign and the measure of whether it sucks your energy or it's something that really fulfills you, then you know which tasks you want to hire for and hand off. So that's a good way if you're a property management company owner out there and
I
you're,
like
really stuck in the weeds and you're trying to figure out how do I get out of this? I highly encourage you to try and do that time audit and figure out what are the exact tasks that you're repetitively doing that you can hire someone and train someone else to do so that you can focus on bigger picture items, things that are really going to move the needle, like what Danny's talking about in terms of networking, getting out there so that you can really start to bring in doors to help grow your property management company.
Absolutely, and it's just vital, right? There's so many tasks that besides that, excuse me, there's so many tasks that are high value but are so mind numbing and so tough that it just depresses you. I mean, this is a hard business at times, like rent collection, right? Calling up people and saying, "Where's the rent?" How
Yeah.
you didn't pay, right? And here's explaining the process of the eviction starting and all that, and just on a regular basis every month trying to get an answer because when when you're paying out your owners and they're not getting paid, they're going to be calling you. So
Yeah.
you
And that's the type of stuff that really sucks your energy.
oh, it's
It makes you
brutal.
not want to go to work the next day, but that's also the type of stuff you can hire someone to do for you.
It's a very low level task that has a huge reward. And
Exactly.
you get somebody that wants a job, that needs a job, right? And this is where remote team members are so crucial, right? There's so many wonderful people in other countries that would love to work for a job that most Americans wouldn't do if it was the last chance they had, right? Like calling people up every day and asking them to make a payment plan, to tell us their issues, to organize them in a way to explain, listen, we don't want to hurt you. We don't want to penalize you. We don't want to mess with you. But if you're not able to pay your rent, eviction is a horrible thing on your record. Let's just figure out a way and you can move on, you
Yeah.
know? And it's brutal. And there's so many tasks like that. Following up a maintenance request with tell me about your experience with our plumber. Tell us about this, right? We always want to keep the tenants engaged with us and find out how our people are doing because we're the last to know with a vendor that goes to a property. We get a bill from them several days later. We don't know that they tracked mud in your unit or that they were 2 hours late or they were rude to your wife who was on the phone. We have no idea. So it's important for us to follow up, but I don't have the time or energy to do that anymore. So
Nor
yeah,
should you be doing it
yeah.
at this point. So at this point, what does your team look like? So you have roughly 750 doors under management between Jacksonville and South Florida. How many team members do you have? What are their positions? What are their roles?
Yeah, we're unfortunately we're down to about nine team members, and we are lacking a couple of professional property managers in the field. We had to recently let a few people go just for the reasons that everybody's struggling right now with employees. It's hard to keep people dedicated and focused on a job that they're not making six figures, and it's difficult time. So my team is including me right now is 10 people. And that's broken up with I'd say there's three people boots on the ground in Jacksonville. And that's kind of my C-suite is basically based in Jacksonville today. So we have our chief operating officer. Trista's amazing. Trista has been in property management for maybe 15 years. She is my high level, person in the company that deals with high level issues. So she's dealing with owner statements, high level accounting issues, overseeing that, we outsource our accounting, and she makes sure that everything is running smooth. And when owners have questions, which owners always have questions, she's the one that is the initial lead to follow up with that owner and to communicate. She's also kind of our team leader in training and education, making sure that the team is following all of our processes. Like we have a high end, or not high end, a industry CRM that we do all of our operational processes in there, and she can go in there and basically be a computer programmer and change processes, update them, and really get in the back end of our software and make sure that everything is flowing. And another partner in Jacksonville, his name is Dusty, and he is our business development manager for both territories. So all incoming leads and all of the sales and following up with clientele and teaching our process and educating people on our sales process and onboarding of owners and properties. And Jacksonville's more focused on multifamily. South Florida is more boutique and single family home condos. So, and then in the field, we have property managers in both territories. Hired a new one in South Florida that I'm currently training, looking for a new maintenance tech as well in South Florida. And then we have four remote team members, and they're all over the world. Philippines, Mexico City, Caracas, and a very obscure place called Texas. is another remote team member, and they're broken up between maintenance and leasing pretty evenly. Rosa, who's been with you the longest, is a utility player. She's involved in everything, in leasing, in maintenance, in following up guest cards, which are any leads that come in. So we break it up pretty evenly between the remote team members, but I'm always looking for that next leasing manager, leasing agent that has a real estate license and can work with us. I am a real estate broker. We are a small real estate brokerage. That's not our focus. Our focus is property management, but we have clients that are interested in acquiring additional investment properties, and we have clients that are interested in selling their properties. So, having a valuable person with a real estate license that can negotiate contracts that can help us in our leasing is something that we're always looking for.
How does that work? So you mentioned that you also will help people buy and sell investment properties. If you have a realtor that refers you business, like you were talking before about getting referrals,
Yeah.
are they hesitant because of the fact that, once that individual goes to actually sell their investment, they're going to lose out on that business?
Absolutely. This is a great question. And this is something that I am like a broken record. I say this spiel that I'm going to give you, 50 times a week, I feel like some weeks. So we call it a realtor referral program. And to me, everybody wins. So the realtor refers us a client. We then lease out their property on a 1 year annual basis. In the South Florida market, that realtor, if they leased out that property, would get 50% of first month's rent. So they get that with me. They get 50% of first month's rent. I'll also sign any agreement with them saying I will not buy or sell any real estate with your client. That's not what I'm doing. I want you to feel comfortable that in a down market like 2024 with high interest rates, and you have a client that can't sell their property for what they want to sell it for, park it with us. We'll lease it out. We'll refer if that client a year or 2 years later comes back and says, "Hey, what would my property sell for?" I immediately put an email together with that agent and I say, "Can you please respond? Mr. Smith is interested in the sale of in the value of his property. I value the rental at 3,000 a month."
Okay.
We're
You're
also
making an agreement with them that when that individual wants to sell or purchase another property, you're going to send them back the business.
not only am I going to send them back to business, if that client becomes very enamored with us, they want to continue to work with us. They didn't really have a strong relationship with that realtor in the first place. They were their cousin's sister's friend. I'm still going to give them a commission if I sell. I'm still going to honor it. I'm still going to make sure that they get a commission because my reputation is the only thing that matters.
Are they going
Not
to get the full commission in that case, or is
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I mean, it's still the nuts and bolts of real estate. I would ask for a referral fee. I would say, hey, listen, this client has additionally said to work with me. Do you want me to back away at this point and tell them I won't work with them? And you can continue to try to sign them, or let's work out a deal where I'll sell it and I'll still give you a commission.
Got
You
it.
know, most of the time at this point, if they haven't talked to their client in several years, and trust me, that's only happened to me once or twice. And the realtor left that situation very happy, and both of those realtors still work with me today. So the next part of that is where I can really win is that when we lease something out on a 1 year annual basis, and that tenant fails for whatever reason, they have to be evicted, or they decide, hey, I'm going to break the lease, I'm moving back to Vancouver. I'm a huge Canucks fan, and I want to get back into being there. I'm sick of the beautiful weather of South Florida. People leave for a job or whatever, take care of family. I always say to them that my guarantee is to the owner of the property. So I'll guarantee the tenant stays a year. If the tenant doesn't stay a full year, I will place the property again on the MLS. I'll pay another agent 50% of 1 month's rent to lease it, and I won't charge the client anything. So I'll make sure that I'm guaranteeing that they're going to have a tenant in there for a year, and nobody else does that. No realtor, no property managers ever guaranteeing, but we will. And we are so comfortable and confident in our process of background screening, in who we place in properties. Just because you have a good credit score, you make 3 times the monthly rent, doesn't mean you're going to be a good fit for certain properties, right? Especially within HOAs, especially the dynamic of how many pit bulls and teenagers and RVs you have, a lot of that's not allowed. So we really match up properties with the right applicants.
Okay.
So that's my realtor referral program. And that's typically, good realtors that do well hate doing the leasing. I've had a lot of high-end realtors refer me clients and then say, I don't want the leasing fee. I want you to take care of this person because they purchased 5 properties with me in the last 7 years, and they mean a lot to me, right? Those are the people that I want because they align business values with ethics that I believe in. And again, our
They really just
reputation.
want someone that's going to do a good job for their clients and treat them well.
And unfortunately, in South Florida, there's not lot of people that are going to do what they say and say what they're going to do and back it up. So there's a lot of people that have been burned by property managers, by vendors. And hey, when we make a repair, whether the vendor guarantees or not, I guarantee that repair for a year. I'm not going to charge my client the same issue twice in a year just because the vendor that went out didn't do a great job. So again, our reputation is great. It reflects in our reviews. It reflects in our code of ethics and our core values, which are really important to us.
Awesome. Another follow-up question with your team members. So you mentioned that your business development manager is in Jacksonville, but does both markets, South Florida and Jacksonville. Earlier, you had spoke about the importance of going out to the property when you can. How do you manage to do that, considering like South Florida and Jacksonville are a 5-hour drive, more or less? Does he come down to South Florida when you have a prospect, or what does that look like?
No, I mean, not all the time. I mean, sometimes when there's a bigger client, he'll come down, but it's just he'll handle the business development introduction, the contracts, the property. But when there's a site visit, I want to be there. I am there. I operate 2 offices in South Florida, so certain clients, depending where they're located, like typically the older client likes to see a brick and mortar office. So we initially have our first meeting there. I love to travel to that prospect's property. And even if they don't want to meet me at the property, I go to the property first. I walk it. I get a vibe for the neighborhood. I get an idea of deferred maintenance. Right, a lot of these clients don't go to their own properties,
Mhm.
and they don't know what it looks like. One of the beauties of property management is that most property managers are not doing a high level inspections multiple times a year, which is standard with us. So I go there, I look at deficiencies, I take pictures, I make notes. I even send my roofer over and say, hey, give me a quote on that. And I show up to the meeting fully educated.
Mhm.
So even though he is the business development manager, I am in the field. I go to networking groups in South Florida, Chamber of Commerce visits, and I still do it. So we work as a team.
Got it. So outside of property management, how are you now investing, let's say, the cash flow that's being generated from your property management business? Are you still investing in a lot of real estate? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, I did a major investment started in end of 22. I purchased a single family home, a smaller single family home, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath in an upscale area near the water. And then I gutted it and I put a 1,000 square foot master suite addition, took the property to the studs and did everything to it. I mean, new electric, new plumbing, new roof, new water service, took out all of the structural walls on the first floor and put in beams so I could have a big open concept. So I put most of my eggs into one basket,
Right.
and did that property deal. And those are the
This is
kind
like a
of,
high-end kind of
yes.
luxury style property
Yeah.
from what I gather.
Yeah, and I have another property back in California that I'm doing similar things to it, not as advanced, to hopefully sell that in within a couple years, so I can do that again here. I've done all kinds of development and remodeling work, and most people are buying investment properties and looking on cash returns and trying to make 8%, 9% in the market. And I have nothing but respect for them. That's my bread and butter. That's how I make a living managing those type of properties for investors, for people that aren't interested in selling their starter home or condo and moving away. but that's not my day-to-day investment strategy. I want to be in an A plus plus neighborhood. I want to buy the crappiest home in that neighborhood, and I want to turn it into one of the nicest. And the beauty of being in Florida and not in Chicago anymore is that we have the ability to do that with owner builder permits, with without having to hire a general contractor, without having to go through all these other stipulations that you have to do in other communities. We can do it all on our own. So I can use my experience and my actual, like, what I get satisfaction out of creating something. You know, there's not a lot of satisfaction all the time in property management. You're dealing with a lot of fires, a lot of headaches, and a lot of other people's problems, and you're making a little bit of a margin on a lot of transactions. So there, you do get some joy. I mean, helping, we do Section 8, not a lot of it, but I have a fair number of Section 8, 15 or 20 properties, and we get enjoyment out of that and pleasure of putting in a single mom with a few kids into a property that she couldn't afford in a neighborhood that has good schools and stuff. So you do have some positive things happen in property management, but pretty much you're a doormat, for tenants, owners, code enforcement, and it's hard. So yeah, no, I truly enjoy investment properties. And one of the things that I would feel like, again, not trying to sound like I'm the greatest or anything, but one of the things I have a lot of skill in is any realtor can show an owner a property and say, hey, this could be a good investment property. Here's what it costs to buy it. And they can look on the MLS and say, oh, units are renting for 2,500 in that community. But very few people have the ability to identify a great neighborhood where the rents are high, go into that property, negotiate a great price on the purchase, and then also give that client an idea of what it would cost to turn that property into a great property where you're going to get a family that hopefully is going to stay for 5 years or more. So it brings in all aspects of real estate, all aspects of property management and real estate brokerage into one person. And that's what I feel that I have a very strong ability to. So I love working with clients, especially clients out of state or out of country, that say, hey, I have this much to invest. I can't find a property that gives me a 10% cap rate return on my investment. What do you want to do? And that's my strategy. Again, go into a very upscale area and purchase a dog, right? And turn it into a prime piece of real estate.
Yeah. So you're finding basically distressed or the ugliest house in the prettiest neighborhood, and then fixing it up, turning it into the nicest house in the nice neighborhood, and then I presume selling it at that point.
Well, for me, I would rather keep it in the portfolio as management,
Okay,
right?
so you'll rent it out for
Yeah, right. So again, I'm not a house flipper. House flippers work as fast as they can, do as little as they can to that property to get in and out quickly and sell it, right? That's house flipping. I'm an add value guy. So I want to add tremendous value to that property. And a lot of times you have to do structural improvements. You have to improve, most house flippers aren't putting in a new 400 amp electric system, running a new water service to the property. They're doing cosmetic work.
yes.
So I'm more interested in taking a property that was built in the 70s and turning it into a modern home that's going to be an income producing property for the next 30 years. So to me,
And I assume being in South Florida, you can find those people that are willing to pay a high monthly rent because you have a lot of high income individuals there.
absolutely. What I found, even as everyone knows, rents have gone up so much since the pandemic, and then in 2024 in South Florida, rents stabilized, and in certain areas they backtracked. But I've never had a problem renting a house and raising the rent on that house on a yearly basis when it's an A plus quality home. People are always looking for a high quality place, right? A place that doesn't have any issues, that is clean, electric is great, lighting is beautiful, outdoor lighting, sprinkler systems. I'm just saying, that type of property that is fully functional, no fleas, right? Is absolutely always warranted. There's always a value to it, and we have no problem renting those. When we run into issues is the investor client that says, oh, we painted that house 5 years ago. Why do you want to paint it again? Right?
Yeah.
And don't want to take care of it. That's where we have problems, not in high level properties.
Got it. So if you could go back in time to when you started your journey in property management, what's the one thing you would have changed to help yourself succeed at a faster pace?
Well, I mentioned one of them. When I would have hit the 35 to 40 door mark, I would have started interviewing people and hiring, people. I've always kind of waited till I needed somebody and then made a quick hire. I think the expression slow to hire, quick to fire is really important, but you can't be behind the eight ball because then you don't have time. So I would have hired more people earlier in my career as one. And just, the Florida market, when I mentioned earlier in this conversation, when I first moved here and you could buy a nice home for 150 or $175,000, I would have bought 10 of them,
Got
knowing what I know now, right?
Yeah.
Those homes average about 850 a house right now in those areas I'm referring to, right?
I'd say
Right.
it's always 2020.
Right. My wife likes to say, don't shit on yourself, right? Never shit on yourself. Just do what you can. But, just to be more in tune with accepting. I was it really took me a long time as a business owner to let a team member make a mistake and learn from it. I was a huge micromanager. I never felt that people could speak in my voice and do the things that I could do. And I held on too tight and found myself just struggling. So, you gotta bring people in that you like and earn, and you earn their trust and they earn your trust. But the other thing is when you hire somebody, it's very easy to give them minimal tasks and hope that they learn by osmosis, right? Well, what's hard to do is get that person and train them 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Get them on the phone calls with you on mute. Get them in Zoom meetings with you off camera. Get them in the car with you and drive properties and just speak about what you're seeing. People that are interested in learning and are quality people are going to learn really fast, but they're not going to learn if you're not engaging them in data in everything. And this idea of like, oh, bringing someone along slowly and letting them get under their feet. No, you got to throw them in the fire and they just have to learn every day. And you have to take that time and spend time with them. I wasted years with certain employees, not giving them more and more responsibility and let them handle menial tasks. So again, micromanaging was a big problem for me.
That's great advice. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. For anyone that wants to connect with you, where would be the best place to do so?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we're Key Renter South Florida, we're Key Renter Fort Lauderdale. Your old friend Google, you can reach out to us. And for me, like one thing I always like to tell people is that within property management, right? There's never, people think, oh, it's very expensive, I can't afford it, my margins are tight. Ask for help. Get educated because the small amount of money a property manager makes versus their connections with air conditioning companies, with plumbers, with handymen can save you tens of thousands of dollars. Big companies charge whatever they want for services. For example, I use a couple big plumbing companies because I have to do permanent work inside communities. They're $850 to replace a toilet. My plumber that works for me replaces the toilet for $300. He places a faucet for $75. So if you do the math month in, month out, property managers save you way more money. So, reach out to a property manager, figure out if they're a good fit for you. If you're in South Florida, Jacksonville, Key Renter Jacksonville, KeyRenterSouthFlorida.com, KeyRenterFortLauderdale.com. Get a hold of us, and we're happy to give you a free evaluation of your property, right? No, you should never pay upfront to someone in our industry. Make them earn it. Make them lease your property before they get paid. First money we make is when we move someone into your property.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danny. Appreciate it.
And Upkeep Media is the way to go for anyone out there. SEO, Google AdWords, YouTube videos, they are the best. They have their finger on the pulse of that whole game. I'm an old guy. I don't get it. I don't know it. Work with the best. Upkeep Media is the best.